before we get started. If it's about a life estate or remainder, we'll get to today. But any general questions? No? Okay, let's get started then. So we're continuing our discussion of estates. And this will keep us occupied for the next, 4 or 5 weeks. It's a very detailed topic. And we said last week that to understand estates, we have to ask ourselves 2 questions. Okay. The first question we said was who owns the piece of property? And the second question is when do they own it? And the reason why we have to ask ourselves these 2 separate questions is because at any given point in time, a single piece of property may have different people with different claims to it. I may own it during my life. When I die, she owns it. And when she dies, her grandkids own it. And there are fairly complicated rules over who gets it and when. So I implore you, any question you do for the remainder of the semester, ask yourself those 2 questions. Who has a present interest in the land? And who has a future interest in the land? You need to memorize certain things, but these are your threshold questions that will guide you between now and the midway point of the semester. The reason why is that there will be different types of present interests, and there will be different types of future interests. And they are all very similar. And every year, without fail, law students end up confusing them. I don't want you to confuse them. I want you to understand them. Okay? If you understand the definitions, answering the exam question will become a piece of cake. If you don't understand the definitions, then answering the exam question will be very difficult. So I'd like to begin by doing a little review. We haven't done too much, but this will at least get you in the right frame of mind. Okay, I finished somewhere there, right? Okay, you're the last person I called on. Okay, so we'll go back up here. Matthew.
Yes.
Okay, Matthew. So if I write on the board, I say Blackacre from O to A and his heirs. Right? Blackacre from O to A and his heirs. That's all I tell you. What can you tell me about what's going on with this transaction? There's a lot of stuff you can tell me.
A has a fee simple.
Whoa, A has a fee simple, right? But let's do it the way I like. What are the present interests here, right? Answer the question in these orders. I promise it may seem, unnecessary here because it's a really easy example, but they'll get much, much more complicated. So explain for me, David, please. I'm sorry, Matthew, the present interest. Okay, and how do we characterize it? You already said it, but say it again. Okay, A has fee simple. Now, finish up, Matthew. How do you know that A has a fee simple? Yes, this you need to memorize. There's no shortcut here. When you see to A and his heirs or to Josh and his heirs, the phrase and his heirs suggests it's a fee simple. That it's entirely up to A how the property is used. He can keep it for his kids. He can sell it. He can do whatever he wants to it. But it's his and his alone. Okay? Okay. So is that James?
Yes.
James, so tell me the second question I'd like to ask. Who has a future interest here?
A's heirs.
Exactly. A's heirs have a future interest. And James, just finish it up. When do we know who are A's heirs?
When A dies.
Yes, this is the key point we discussed last week. No living person has heirs. I like the way the book frames, right? No living person has heirs. You only calculate the heirs when the person dies. Because what if someone has a son and the son dies before them? The dead son cannot be an heir. So A's heirs, James exactly right, have the future interest. We don't know who those people are until A dies. Okay? And Anna, just to wrap it up, Eventually, when A dies, how would we characterize the future interests of the heirs? What estate do they have? Exactly. That's right. Because once A dies, his heirs get it in fee simple. So when we say A's heirs have a future interest in Blackacre in fee simple, right? That's a lot of words, right? But that describes this. This is why lawyers use a shorthand from O to A and his heirs. Okay, A is a fee simple, and then A's heirs have a future interest in Blackacre in fee simple. Does anyone have any questions about that? This is the easiest example we'll do all semester. It gets much tougher. Yes, sir.
Let's say you leave it to A and his heirs, and A says, I leave it to my heirs equally. They will have an equal share.
Do whatever you want.
Right. But then when those heirs are dying and
Yeah.
heirs, how would that transfer over? It seems like you get more.
You're chopping a piece of property into a lot of pieces, right?
Yeah.
We'll do that in about 5 minutes. So that's actually the example of when you have multiple heirs, you chop up pieces of interest. It's actually really complicated. This is why, though, the question he raises, under the common law, the doctrine of primogeniture, right? This is the idea that the firstborn male gets everything, right? You can say there's a misogynistic tendency, but there's also a effective tendency. This way, there was one person with the property, and you weren't chopping up with 18 kids, right? The common law often looks evil from hindsight, but there actually were purposes at the time. All right? So Christian. Is that Christian right there?
Yeah.
Christian, tell me, please. Does O have any interest? Again, O is the original. O is the original owner. Does O have any interest whatsoever in Blackacre at this point with this transaction?
He's still alive, right?
Yeah, he's alive. Does O have any interest? Present or future interest?
I would say he has the present interest.
What interest does O have?
He currently has the state himself. He's alive.
No. What did O give to A? I'm glad to that. What did O give to A in this case?
He gave him a. He gave him a fee simple.
Okay. O gave A a fee simple. You're exactly right. If O gave A a fee simple, what's left over for O?
I guess nothing.
Nothing. Exactly right. O has nothing. O has absolutely nothing, and this is an important point to get. You need to account for all of the people in the transaction. You ask, there are 3 names there, right? There's O, there's A, and these A's heirs. These are 3 separate parties. When you look at these questions for your exam and otherwise, you need to be able to account for every person. If someone's named or referenced like an heir, you need to say, what is their interest? O's got zip. He's got nothing. Why? O had fee simple to begin with, right? He had a fee simple before he did this, but once he gave to A the fee simple, O has no interest whatsoever. Nothing comes back to him.
Because your exam is so word restricted, if we're just describing O's interest, can we just say O has nothing, assuming that like we've done the rest here? Because
Yeah. I mean, the answer there is O gave away his interest. He has nothing left. That's what, 6 words? Yeah. Don't worry about that now. That will not be your problem. People will get worried about it, but very few people have actually hit the word limit. Most people go below it. It's something Lawson's love to worry about and doesn't actually bother them on the exam. I've done this before. I know. Okay. So everyone okay with this example? No questions on this. This is again the easiest example we'll have all semester. It gets worse. All right. Let's try a different one, please. So this is example 2. Okay. Blackacre from O to A for life, then to B's heirs. Okay. Blackacre from O to A for life, then to B's heirs. Okay, so let's do again, Ashley. Let's try and answer these 2 questions, right? So, Ashley, please tell me, who has a present interest in Blackacre? What's the present interest for Blackacre?
I think it'd be the A, who has the life estate,
Exactly right. How do you know that, Ashley?
because
Yeah, again, these are the easy ones, right? N is heirs means fee simple. Life means life estate. It gets harder, but fine. So Ashley, tell me, what does it mean then for A to have a life estate? Describe it in words.
I guess that he has it for life, like he owns it.
For his natural life, right?
Yes.
So as long as A is alive, he owns Blackacre. Everyone agree with me there? No problem. Is that Caitlin? Caitlin, tell me please. Can A sell Blackacre during his life? Can you sell something that you have a life estate to? You said it for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong if you have a life estate. You can sell your property. There's nothing wrong with that. But now, Caitlin, let me ask you the follow-up question. Would anyone ever buy a piece of property from someone with a life estate?
Probably not,
Why not?
because it's already called it.
Yeah. So I'll give you actually a very current example. This was in the news about a month ago. If anyone saw Hugh Hefner, right, the Playboy Mansion guy, right? He said he wanted to sell the Playboy Mansion, but he's still alive. He's got to be, what, 90 or close to it. So Hugh Hefner said, I will sell the Playboy Mansion while reserving a life estate for myself. In other words, I get to live there till I die, and whoever buys it gets it once I'm not here anymore, right? I mean, for Hugh Hefner, that actually makes some sense, right? He doesn't really care what happens after he dies, but he wants to keep living there with the bunny, so he's, who's dead, right? Yes, ma'am.
Like if you're writing a deed, would you have to say from Hugh
Yeah.
to Hugh, and then
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, we could do like this, like from, change it up, right? From Hugh to Hugh for life, right? Then to B. That's the example she just gave, right? Hugh is giving himself a life estate. He had a fee simple in the Playboy Mansion, but he's carving out a life estate. And now Hugh has a life estate. He has it for life. Everyone with me so far, right? Good example. Thank you. Okay, so Zachary, what happens? I'm sorry, who has the future interest then in this case? B, yeah, the buyer. B stands for buyer in case that's, there's not a, right? So how would we describe then? Actually, let me make it like this, to B and his heirs, make it easier. Yeah, but I'm making it clear. Yeah. So Zachary, how would we describe B's future interest? Let's finish it up. Yes. The future interest that B has is called a remainder. We say he has a remainder in fee simple. You need to remember this, okay? There are pairs. There are things that match up. This is something you just have to remember. When the present interest is a life estate, the future interest in some third party is called a remainder. I said it again. When the present interest is a life estate, the future interest in a third party is remainder. And I'm going to underline third party because in a minute we'll do an example where there's a different type of future interest after a life estate. Okay? You need to remember these framings. Hugh has a life estate. The buyer has remainder in fee simple. That's his future interest. Because once Hugh Hefner dies, he finally kicks the bucket, right? The bed stops spinning. Then it goes to the buyer in fee simple. So exactly, I mean, that's how you would draw the deed up from Hugh to Hugh for life to B and his heirs, or to B, which we find, but let's be clear here. Everyone get this so far? Everyone have questions about this? Stop me if you don't. Yes, ma'am.
the life estate can be transferred, right?
Yes. So, okay, let me ask you this question, Jessica, as you raised it, right? Hugh Hefner already did this transaction, right? Could Hugh Hefner then transfer his life estate to his current wife? Is there anything stopping him?
Yes, but it will only be until he's alive.
Yes. So let's say Hugh Hefner transfers his life estate to his wife. That's all good. He can do that. But once Hefner dies, that life estate terminates and then goes to the buyer, goes to B.
So
how is it called the interest that that wife gets? Because
It's a very short
he
interest.
gets a remainder.
It's a very short interest. Might only be a couple of years, but
Yeah,
you can do it.
Is it also remainder? How is it called?
So actually, it's French. You know what it's French? It'll be called a life estate pour autre vie. I'll write it. I'm going to spell it wrong. It's French. I never spelled this right. But let's say that Hugh gives his wife his life estate, right? We say the wife, the present interest. I don't know what his wife's name is, but I'll just call her wife. The present interest would be a life estate pour autre vie. If I don't get the spelling of that, just correct me. I don't speak French. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Mercy. Per autre vie. I always spell this wrong. Effectively, what this means is the wife's life estate is measured by Hugh Hefner's life. The life's wife estate. This is just for Jessica's question. You know, it's extra, but the life's wife estate is measured by Hugh Hefner's life. So once Hugh Hefner dies, her life estate disappears, and it goes to the buyer. Okay?
Thank
you. You're welcome. Everyone get this example? Any questions on this example? Okay. Let me give you one more example, and then we can get to the reading for today. It's very important that you understand these, and if you don't, I encourage you to go watch the video after class and walk through these again, because it gets rocky after this. So let's try this. From O to A for life. That's it. From O to A for life. That's all there is. Okay. So, Catherine, tell me, who has the present interest here? Okay, what do we call A's estate? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. A has a life estate. That's his present interest. That's the easy part. Okay, Catherine. Describe the future interest here. The future interest, please. Sorry? Exactly. Notice the example I gave above. I said from Hugh to Hugh for life, comma. Always pay attention to the commas because that separates the different parts of the transaction. I said from Hugh to Hugh for life, comma, then to B. That was the first example. Here, I said simply from O to A for life, period. End of sentence. Full stop. For my British friends, right? I have Canadian friends as well. We've got Canadians. Full stop. In Canada, you call a period a full stop. That's what they're called. Also, you call the letter Z, Z. Okay? That is the end of the transaction. She's exactly right. After A dies, it goes back to O, the grantor. And what do we call that? Do you know? Bingo. O has a reversion in fee simple. O has a reversion. Again, you need to tell the difference between a remainder and a reversion. I promise you, about 20% of you will confuse this during the exam. I promise, without fail. No matter how many times I repeat this, you'll do it. So I'm going to say it anyway. In this situation, there's a reversion, okay? So I'm going to write it like this. When the present interest, you have to memorize this, is a life estate, and the future interest is an original grantor, the future interest is a reversion. Okay. When the present interest is a life estate, and the future interest is in the original grantor, we call the future interest a reversion. You need to remember the difference between a remainder and a reversion. A remainder is where a future interest is in a third party. The reversion is where the future interest is in the grantor. They're so easy to confuse. Remainder, reversion. I mean, it's the same word, right? You got to memorize this. There's no shortcut here, unfortunately. There's not a lot of memorization in this class, but this is one of the things that you'll need to memorize. Okay, everyone get this. So when you look at one of these questions, you always have to say, okay, who are the people involved, right? So here we have O and A. We only have two people. The other question we had, Hugh and his wife, whatever, right? Identify all of the people. And always ask yourself who has the present interest and who has the future interest. If you answer these questions for yourself, you will hopefully be on the right track. If you fail to answer these questions, you will go off track very quickly and you'll get lost. And not to scare you, right? But there's something called a possibility of reverter. We'll do this next week, a possibility reverter. You have reversion and possibility of reverter. Those are really similar. So make sure you understand remainder, reversion, they're different things. Questions? Anything? Yes, sir.
You took out for life, is it just fee simple?
Yes, but I won't give it to you like that. If I want to show you a fee simple, I will say to A and his heirs. I won't just say to A. Yeah, I know the book suggests that, but when I'm giving you the questions, I'll always make it clear to A and his heirs. Other questions? Stop me now if you have any questions, please. No? Okay, we'll move on. So the first topic in the reading for today discusses, I think this was actually the question that Pierce was asking me a couple minutes ago, about how do you actually calculate inheritances. Now, you will take a full class in wills and trusts. This is meant to be a brief survey of that topic. Okay? So in the back, Jackie, please. Jackie, tell me, what is issue? What does it mean to have issue? Exactly. So the decedent is a person who died, right? The issue are effectively the not quite offspring, but the blood relatives of a close nature to the decedent. There's also another expression called kin. Kin is defined more broadly as people who are, have a claim to the property of a dead person. Today, issues, kin, heir, these phrases more or less mean the same thing. At one point, there was actually a serious issue with illegitimacy, which people might call bastardacy, right? If you were an illegitimate person, that is, your parents were not married, you cannot inherit property. So it was actually a serious stigma on those whose parents were not married. Today, that is no longer an issue. The courts have long ago held that laws banning illegitimates from taking property were unconstitutional, and other states banned them by statute. So don't worry too much about that aspect. But one of the issues that does come up, and that's what Pierce's question was, is what happens if a person dies with, 2 kids, 4 grandkids, a wife, a sister, a dog, with an entire family, right? How do you chop up the property when you have a single piece of land? And that actually becomes quite complicated. So every state, including Texas, has something called a Statute of Wills. And it, with precision, it's actually very precise, decides which members of the family take first and in what priority they take. So, for example, generally speaking, this is a generalization among all states, children always have a very high claim to any property. Spouses also have a very high claim to property. But then when you start going to, I don't know, cousins, brothers, sisters, parents, they get lower on the pecking order. They don't take it quite as well. One point I want to stress, though, is everything we are talking about today is what's called intestacy. Intestacy. Ross, what's intestacy? Exactly. When you die intestate, or if you're intestacy, there's no will. And as a result, the laws of the state you're in decides how your property is chopped up. If you have a will, you can say, I leave all of my money to my dog, right? Maybe a stupid idea, but you can do that. I leave all my money to my, my third cousin twice removed, screw my wife and kids, right? There's some community property issues there, but generally speaking, with a will, you can leave money to whomever you wish. So in the examples we're giving today, every person dying has no will. You can always contract around the statute of will, but here people are dying without wills. Okay? All right, so questions on that? Let's take a look at the questions on page 221, please. I have it up here. Well, and this question I think will help illustrate the thing. So, Alyssa, can you please read question number 1, please, on page 222 or 221? Thank you.
One son is born to A, then O dies intestate, who owns that under honor.
Okay, so let's walk through this, Alyssa, one step at a time, right? So we have O. O owns Blackacre. He has 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Okay, the son dies intestate, and the son gives all of his property to his wife. Okay, the son has 3 kids, B1, B2, and B3. Okay. And then A, the son is born to, A1 is born to A. O dies without a will. Okay, so we start, Alyssa, we discuss this doctrine of primogeniture, right? This was abolished in the America shortly after the Revolution. But under the doctrine of primogeniture, the oldest male son takes at death. The oldest male son takes at death. Who here is the oldest male son at the time of O's death? Yes. Who is the oldest male son at the time of? Exactly. Why is it B2? Everyone see that, right? You only calculate heirs at the time of death. I know you're going to get messed up with this, right? Even though B had an older son, even though B was the oldest son, he was dead at the time. So you actually go down the bloodline, right? Who then is the oldest male son? Okay, well, it's actually the son of the son. And it goes down to B2. Okay, why? Because the father was the oldest male, and then it goes down his bloodline. So you actually track the oldest male in the oldest male's bloodline. You can imagine this got really complicated back in the day of primogeniture. Okay? So everyone get that. She's exactly right. B2 will be the oldest male because it goes through his father, who's now dead. Now we are in the... Yes, sir?
Wait, if A's son was older than B's son?
Well, A was a daughter, though.
Yeah, so B2 would still get it?
Yes. You see?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. A was a daughter. Because she was a daughter under the primogeniture doctrine, her entire bloodline was cut out. Only because the son, B, was a boy. He was the oldest male. You go down through his bloodline. I know this is like, House, was it Downton Abbey stuff, right? It's very. I've never actually watched the show, but apparently it's about property, so I'll leave it to you. But yes, ma'am.
Even though B2 was not a direct son of O, because I know I read like only when no other son is the father.
All right, say it one more time, please.
It says like only there were no other no sons with the decedent's daughters inherit.
Under primogeniture, that's correct. Under primogeniture, if there were no sons at all in the bloodline, right, then the daughters could take. Yeah, I mean, they look. They try and search their bloodline, right? In the medieval times, they would try and find a son. This is why, we'll discuss this later, but King Henry VIII, right? Few of you are nodding, which is good. King Henry VIII was the King of England, and he desperately wanted to have a son who could then, take over the British Empire. And he had one wife, and she wouldn't give him a son. And he had another wife who wouldn't give him a son. And he kept having wife after wife. What he didn't realize is, for those of you who've taken sex ed, the the Y chromosome comes from the male, right? Women can only give an X chromosome, so it's actually the husband's fault for not delivering a Y chromosome. But they didn't know that back then. So he actually divorced his first wife, beheaded his second one, the third one survived, divorced, died. So basically he had 6 wives, a couple of them were beheaded, a couple of them divorced, and then Queen Elizabeth, you know, if you ever saw Shakespeare in Love, came into power, and then she ruled in her reign. But it got messy after that. But the reason why we have the Church of England was because Henry VIII had to leave the church when he get divorced from his first wife because the Pope would not give an annulment. The entire reason why we have a Church of England was because of primogeniture. I try and explain this. Property defined much of world history, and people don't even realize it. Okay. Yes, sir.
So if B didn't exist, so O didn't have a son, and A had a son, his
Under primogeniture, I think that's right. Yes, sir.
skip past
I think so. Yes, sir. Okay, but let's go to the modern era, right? We don't have primogeniture in the United States. All right, so Tim, let's walk through this, okay? So here we have a situation. We have a daughter, A. B, the son is dead, right? And then B had 3 kids. And also says that B gave all of his property to his wife. So first, Tim, let me ask you this question. Does the wife of B get anything? Does the wife of B get anything? Under the modern American law, yes, sir. Does the wife of B get anything?
Yeah.
What does she get?
Normally, she inherits, under Texas law, she'd inherit all of them.
Tim, let me ask you a question. When B died, did he have any interest in Blackacre? Oh. When B died, did he have any interest in Blackacre? No. When B died, when B died, could he give his wife anything about Blackacre? No. So does the wife get anything here?
No.
That's exactly right. Whatever the wife gets, that is determined at the time of B's death. Once B dies, whatever property he has at that moment goes to his wife, right? No problem. But he did not have Blackacre quite yet. He didn't yet have Blackacre. Understand? Everyone get that part. This is actually one of the trickier parts of the question. You calculate what B has at the time of his death. He had no present interest in Blackacre, and his future interest goes away. He died, right? He died before his father. If you die before your father, you never get your remainder, right? Your future interest goes away. I'm gonna get to them in a minute. I haven't gotten to the kids yet. I'm just talking about the wife. But everyone get why the wife takes 0. Wife gets nothing, right? Wife gets absolutely 0. Okay. Brian, what about the wife? I'm sorry, what about the daughter? What about A? What does A get, if you had to guess?
I would say she gets property because under modern American law, primogeniture doesn't exist.
It does not. So does the daughter get everything?
She gets half.
Yes. The daughter gets half. He's exactly right. Under the Statute of Wills, in the facts we have here, there are only 2 children. Each kid gets half. So A has half a Blackacre, right? You're exactly right, Brian. A has half a Blackacre. But, Matthew, what happens to B's half? B was supposed to get half, but he was dead. What happens to B's half? What do you think happens here? There are 3 kids, 3 little rugrats skimming around.
3 kids.
Yes. You split up B's half among the 3 kids. So you have, lawsuits hate fractions, right? But you have 1/6, 1/6, and 1/6, which is adding up to 1/2. So the answer to the question number 1 is that A gets half, and the 3 kids get 1/6 each, because that was their father's share. They get what their father would have gotten. Everyone get that question? Yes, ma'am.
On exam, we're
flustered about our math. Is it okay to say a third of a half?
Like that's even more complicated.
I know, but if I.
How about this?
Do my math in my-
Law students hate math. I'll make the numbers easy. It'll be half of a half, which is a quarter. How about that?
Okay.
Good enough? You can use fingers in your exam. You can count your toes, whatever you want. I don't know. But yeah, law students hate math. I remember once my contract exam, whatever, my first year of law school, the professor made us calculate damages, and there was no calculator. Everyone freaked out. I can't add numbers. What am I doing? It was actually really funny because the professor was like, "What do you mean you can't add?" But he apparently didn't anticipate that problem. Everyone get this much so far? Questions on this one? Yeah.
Before he dies, he transfers the interest to his wife.
Yes. Well, no, actually. So I take it back. The issue here, right, is O dies without a will. So O's property is going to be divvied up by the Statute of Wills. It doesn't even matter what B does. So I'm sorry, I answered your question wrong correctly, but I thought better of it. No. The only way that could be resolved, right, is O could write a will, and O could write, well, when I die, it goes to my son or my son's wife, and then that's perfectly legal. But under the intestacy statutes, that couldn't be done. Mary, let me ask you a question. What about poor little A1, the son, the steak sauce, right? A1, what does he get? What does A1 get? Exactly. A1 gets nothing till his mom dies, or maybe never at all. His mom can write him out of his will. But because the daughter is still alive, the grandson gets nothing. A1 gets 0. Everyone understand that much? Poor little A1 steak sauce gets nothing. And B2 bombs. So there it is. Yeah. All right. Any questions on this first one? No? All right. You want to read number 2, please, Justin? It's short.
O conveys black acres to A and her heirs. A dies intestate without issue of black acres to the estate.
Okay, so the question is, O conveys black acres to A and her heirs. Okay, so Justin, who there has the present interest in this situation? Question number 2. How would we describe A's present interest? Thank you, sir. A has a present interest fee simple. And then who has the future interest? Finish it up. A's heirs have it in. Exactly right. A has it present interest in fee simple. Future interest is A's heirs in fee simple. And Justin, does O have any interest whatsoever? O does not. O has no reversion or anything else. Right? So, Kevin, what happens if A dies without any issue at all? So now, read this question carefully, right? B dies. I'm sorry. I was pointing the wrong one. A dies without issue. What's the difference between issue and heirs? Oh. What's the difference between issue and heirs? It's a trick question. What's an issue? What are heirs? Heir is broader than issue. Issue are people related directly by blood, right? You may have, no children. You have no issue. What if you have a sister? Kevin, is a sister an heir? Is your grandmother an heir? Is your adopted father an heir? You go down the line, right? The fact that there's no issue, that means there's nothing basically from your blood, right? Nothing came from you, literally. But the Statute of Wills is a very elaborate formula of tracking down heirs. There was that one case I mentioned last week where there was a gentleman who was a Holocaust survivor, where basically his entire family was wiped out in the Holocaust. And then he died in New York and actually Staten Island, where I'm from, without a will. And he had millions of dollars. They could not find a single heir. I mean, they looked, man. They looked. They could not find anyone. He died, had no kids. His wife died years before. And so now basically millions of dollars escheated to the state. But the question here is they first, before they do the escheat, ascertain if there are any heirs floating around. You know, they can contact everyone, you know, in foreign countries like Princess Diaries cell, right? You find an heir. Yeah.
So the state will have to find there?
I'm sorry?
The state will have to find there?
So one of two things will happen. The first thing is when people die, if there's actually any property, an executor is usually appointed. However, if there's no executor appointed, a probate court can actually take it upon itself. Because if there's a significant amount of money, heirs always come out of the woodworks, right? If there's a lot of money at issue, you know, your eighth cousin twice removed will suddenly emerge like, oh, here's my loved one. I never saw him, but he's I want his money. It's remarkable after people will die with money, all these heirs come out of nowhere to try and claim it. But if no one shows up, like the case I mentioned with the Holocaust example, where if all the claims that show up are fraudulent, then it goes to the courts and they resolve it to the state in escheat. Okay, questions? Yes, sir.
I know you said that modern day heir, kin, issue are all kind of synonymous. For the sake of the exam,
Yeah, heir is broader than issue, right? For the most part, assume someone has heirs, okay? And again, students love the escheat. I don't quite know why. They love this idea of property going to the state. It's repulsive. But assume for purposes of anything I give you that there will be an heir found somewhere in the world. Unless, and you can see my old exams, there's like an epidemic, there's a zombie apocalypse, right? Something like that, maybe there are no heirs, but for the most part, assume that an heir can be ascertained. The students love the escheat. I can't put my finger on it. Oh, I know why, because it's an easy ask. Oh, it goes to the government. Then we have to figure out this, who gets what, right? It's easy. No, I'll make it hard. You're not getting out that easy. Government takes plenty of property otherwise. It's not going to be the case here. Other questions? All right. I asked you to skim the reading on the fee tail. And the reason why I asked you to skim it is because it doesn't exist anymore. The fee tail was an effort to quite literally keep family in a bloodline. I don't have it here. Keep family in a bloodline. The idea was you said to A and the heirs of his body. To A and the heirs of his body. What that means is A cannot sell it. It can only go to his firstborn male son. Again, Henry VIII primogenitor. This is why this was so important. These fee tails would work to keep a piece of property in the same family for literally centuries. You had these landed gentry, so to speak, these lords of the land who would keep family in their keep family lands forever. Now, economically, this is an awful idea because people can't put their land to the highest use when it's so constrained. And then so gradually the fee tail was abolished, and by the time of the American Revolution and shortly thereafter, it was eliminated. A couple states actually keep it today in some limited form. However, it can easily be eliminated by virtue of a will or by some sort of transaction during life. I don't think you will ever encounter an old deed with a fee tail on it in Texas. I don't think it was ever actually an issue in Texas, but if you do, the answer is it's void and contrary to public policy. And most courts confronted with such a fee tail simply deem it a fee simple. They just remove the limitation and say, okay, it's fee simple now. And that makes life easier. That's all I want you to know about the fee tail. I don't have anything else to add, unless anyone has any questions. No? Nothing? Yes, ma'am.
Will we have questions, like intricate questions about? No.
No, this is the last point I'll say about it. So
Just
that,
FYI.
in the event you're researching some really old records from New England at some point, maybe you'll find one, but I can't imagine you'll ever come across this. They've been illegal for 2 centuries. They exist. I mean, they have them. They're still in existence, but they don't really matter. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let's do the first case, please. A white against brown. the color case, I suppose, right? Sarah, you want to walk us, please, through the facts of White against Brown?
So this guy had a live estate. He, I guess, left Jesse.
Uh-huh.
She left behind this will where she left it to her niece, and also left her personal property to Sandra White.
Okay.
And, also left her home, did not be sold to Evelyn White, and then left her personal property to Sandra White, and he reiterated he didn't want his house to be sold.
Oh, it was a she. It was a she. That's okay. You're exactly right. It was a she, not a he. You're close.
Okay, so I guess the court was having trouble interpreting what interest was left
Okay.
behind.
Yes, ma'am. So this is actually a picture of the house at issue. Glamorous, right? As you'll often find in these cases, the actual house is not nearly as important as the land underneath it. And the sorts of disputes that we have are actually fighting over the land, not the actual four-house shack with the kitchen that no one ever, in the living room that no one ever went into unless someone died, which is a weird thing. So people are very idiosyncratic. So this is actually the will. It's what's called a holographic will, which is not nearly as cool as it sounds. When I was in law school, man, a holographic will, like, like Gem the holograms, right? No, a holographic will is merely a handwritten will. That's all it is, right? Disappointed. It's a will written by hand, and generally it was not reviewed by an attorney. Now, I told you last week that for the most part, wills that are not signed by two witnesses are void. States have certain exceptions if someone's old, infirm of mind, they're about to die. There's certain exceptions where a handwritten will actually be sufficient. So put aside that statute of wills here. The will was valid. But the question became, how do we interpret the will? And you don't have much, if any, interpretation to statutory, you don't have much exposure in law school to statutory interpretation, right? How do we interpret the meaning of words? You might do this a little bit in contracts. But one of the goals of property law is to try to ascertain, to try to understand the intent of the drafter, right? This is an exercise we do in lots of classes. How do we understand the meaning of words? And what complicates this when people write their own wills is they're not learned in the law. I don't mean that in a negative sense. They don't know the correct magic words to accomplish what they want to accomplish, right? So Hunter, putting aside the actual framing, right? Let's say, for example, that the old lady, I can't remember her name, whatever it was, Sandra. Not Sandra. The widow. I'll show the widow, right? Let's say the widow wanted, in fact, to give Sandra. She wanted to give Evelyn a life estate, and she wanted to say, "I want Evelyn to live in this house for the rest of her life, and when she dies, it goes to Sandra." How would you, as her lawyer, have written that? I want, Evelyn to be in the house for her life, and then when Evelyn dies, to Sandra. How would you have written that up? Just call widow.
From widow
Yeah.
to this wife for life.
Comma.
Then to and who's
Sandra.
To Sandra. Then to Sandra. Sandra.
Exactly right. All the widow would have had to write is like this, right? From widow to Evelyn for life, then to Sandra and her heirs. Look at that. 10 words, right? This is why you're in law school, to translate the sorts of problems that people have into very precise language. And now you've been saying this now for what, a class and a half? And you know exactly what this means. From the widow to Evelyn for life, and to Sandra and heirs. Easy, right? Evelyn has it for the remainder of her natural life, and then once Evelyn kicks the bucket, it goes to Sandra, and then her heirs are fee simple. Perfect. Easy, right? Piece of cake. But the widow was not represented by a lawyer. Right? This is why people screw up their wills very often. She wrote it herself. So this is what she wrote. She wrote, her name was Jessie, that's right. I, Jessie, being in sound mind, declare this my last will and testament. I appoint my niece Sandra to be the executrix. Executrix is the basically the person who administers the executor of the estate. I appoint Sandra as the executrix. I wish Evelyn to have my home to live in and not to be sold. Underlining not and underlining sold. I leave my personal property to Sandra White Perry. My house, again, not to be sold. Signed, Jessie. Okay, so Hunter? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'll move on to Jose? No, Richard. Richard, thank you, sir. Richard, tell me, how did you understand this language when you first read it?
I mean, I thought everyone got
You thought Evelyn got a fee simple. Why did you think Evelyn got a fee simple?
I don't know. I just thought it was conditional if she got it.
Wait a minute. So we said this in the last class, and I don't think I'm wrong. We said fee simple means absolute control of the land, right? You can do whatever you want with it. You can live on it. You can sell it. You can burn it. You can do whatever you want. What is this conditional business, right? How can you have a fee simple that's conditional? I don't understand.
Because it's still, you're technically still the owner, and can still pass on to your heirs.
Right, but if it's conditional, then she can't do whatever she wants, right?
True.
So under what you just said, which is not wrong, in fact, this is how the court reads it, right? Under what you just said, it's some sort of fee simple that's restricted, right? You can have it, but you can't sell it. What kind of fee simple is that? Isn't the most important, element of having property being able to sell it, do what you do what you will with it? I mean, you're not wrong, but I want you to explain it. I'm sorry? Let me ask you the question different. Yeah. So this is actually what frustrates the court, right? They realize that this can't be an actual fee simple. So they call it a fee simple with restraint on alienation. They say, well, it's like a fee simple, right? It's like a fee simple, but not quite, because there's restraint that you can't sell it. So effectively, she can live in this land forever, but she can't sell it. They say it's a fee simple with restraint and alienation. Brenda, let me ask you a question. What happens under that situation when Evelyn dies? I'm sorry? Evelyn, not everyone. Evelyn, I'm sorry. No nuclear holocaust, right? Evelyn dies. Evelyn dies, not everyone. Evelyn. What happens when Evelyn dies? Where's the property go? Yes. Yes, indeed. If it was a fee simple with this restraint, when Evelyn dies, it goes to Evelyn's heirs. Now, Brenda, here comes a harder question. Can Evelyn's heirs sell the property? Yeah, right? Can Evelyn's heirs, say she has one son, only one heir, could her son then sell the property? I'm sorry?
I assume no.
Yeah.
But it still have that condition.
Yeah, Erica, what do you think? Could the children of Evelyn, could they then sell the property, or are they still bound by this fee simple with restraint? Yeah. So this is a weird situation, right? It's almost like a fee tail, isn't it? Her family is basically stuck on this land forever. They can never sell it under this fee simple conditional. her family is stuck on the land forever under this fee simple condition, fee simple with restraint and alienation. Isn't that something, right? Yeah.
But then if they sold it, like, so what?
Oh, what if they tried to sell it? Who could stop them?
The heirs of, I don't know, the widow, I suppose. Or
The heirs of Jesse. The heirs of Jesse hold the strings in that condition, and they could actually block the sale of the property. Indeed, this is how the case arose, right? Why is this case even in court? Because Evelyn tried to sell it, and the heirs blocked it. Because who's the heir? I'm sorry, Sandra, right? Sandra is the heir. Sandra tried to block Evelyn from selling it. That's why this case arose. So under this fee simple with restraint and alienation, Evelyn's and her heirs can be there forever, but they can't sell it. Crazy, right? Yeah, Landon.
Did it mention a gift? They can't gift it either.
Can't get rid of it. Yeah. If indeed, sorry, your hand's up, Elizabeth Farrell. I'm sorry, I didn't call on you.
So could she put in her will, Evelyn, and have it go to somebody else?
No, she can't, because she only owns it without a right of selling. Imagine a bundle of sticks, right? She can use it. She can exclude people. She can't sell it.
So when people get inherited,
Not quite, but for persevere, that's close enough. So under this fee simple restraint, right? Evelyn, not everyone, Evelyn cannot sell it. Yeah.
This may just be a product of it being holographic will, but it seems like the condition is only on average.
My house is not to be sold. Yeah. So she didn't say it once, she said it twice. My house is not to be sold, period, by anyone. I mean, this is effectively a fee tail, which I'm sure would be void for other reasons, but you know, my house is not to be sold, period. I'm sorry?
Did they sell like a life estate in it or something?
Oh, okay. We'll get to life estate in a minute. Okay, we'll get to life estate in a minute. But under the first interpretation that I think Richard took us down this dark hole, right? If it's in fact a fee simple subject to the restraint and alienation, it can never be sold. Okay? Okay, so Julia, what does the court then say? Can we have this fee simple subject to restraint and alienation? Can we? But I just asked you, can the court enforce this fee simple subject to alienation? Will the court enforce this insane fee tail where it can never be sold? Will they actually enforce that? No. What do you think, Veronica? I'm sorry? Well, why is the answer no? What does the court say about this not to be sold language? Are they going to enforce that? Louder.
No.
Why not? What does the court say? The court addresses it at the very end of their opinion. They say there's two ways of reading it, right? The court says there are two ways of reading it, right? What are the two different ways of reading this will, Veronica? What do you think, Trail? No. Let me ask you the question like this. Is the court going to enforce this restraint and alienation, this fee simple, with restraint?
I would say no. The only people would be that the heirs of Jesse would try to enforce it.
So what does the court actually do to this provision of the will? Are they going to enforce this sentence? Yeah, exactly right. Imagine, if you will, the court took a red pen and they crossed out this sentence. Took a red pen and crossed it out. Okay, Daniel, if the will was exactly the same, right, and they just crossed out this one sentence, how would we most likely interpret the will if we just crossed out this one sentence?
Just the very last of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone can't sell it.
Yeah. Or actually, I'll make it easier, right? Let's say you cross out both instances of not to be sold. You just cross those out. What would the will be then? Yeah. If the will was written differently, would you cross out this not to be sold language? Without question, Daniel, right? Without question, it'd be a fee simple. So this is what the court does. It's very interesting. They apply what may be called a saving construction. A saving construction, right? They basically rewrite the will in order to affect the intent of the grantor. They rewrite the will in order to give effect to what they see as the intent of the grantor. They see the intent of this document as giving a fee simple absolute to Evelyn. That's what they see it, as a fee simple. So instead, they just take their red pen and they cross out a few words in the will. This sounds insane, right? When you read the Chief Justice's opinion in the Obamacare case, you'll laugh. But this is something that judges do quite often, right? They rewrite things to affect the intent of what they think the drafter had in mind. So the court won't actually enforce this, and they'll just say it's a fee simple, it's contrary to public policy, and it's a fee simple. Period.
Did it have a lot to do with the fact that these are the ones that lived with her for years and years and years, and she loved them because even though it's the sister-in-law and the niece or whatever, the other family members, they're also kind of at the same
right.
rung of family.
Yeah.
But
So
they didn't take care of it.
So Sarah raises a fair point, right? When a court is trying to determine the intent of the dead person, is it fair game to look at the fact that this was a loved one and they lived with her and they took care of her, and you have these ingrate, relatives that never cared about her? Yeah, I suspect the court said, no. This is what grandma really wanted, right? This is what grandma really wanted, and we're going to rewrite the will to affect that. Because she wasn't a lawyer. She didn't know what she was writing. She didn't know what her words meant, right? We don't know what she meant. So the majority opinion, right? It's a little complicated. They don't say this so clearly, but they say, look, we think, right? We think in our heart of hearts that Jessie wanted to give a fee simple. The words she used are not consistent with a fee simple. If we actually enforced the words as they were written, it would be like a fee tail. It will be restraint and alienation. That's contrary to public policy. So we will just read the will by striking out those words. Strike them out. And once you strike out those words, this is an easy fee simple, and Evelyn takes everything. Everyone see that? Yes, ma'am.
Just to confirm, so if she would have left out that not to be sold, so it was Evelyn, my home for life, and then my personal property to Sandra. You said it's a fee simple, and I guess it's like because we are supposed to interpret it as the court says that they're transferring the most absolute.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there in 1 minute, but you're exactly right. So there's another aspect of the case that the court addresses that Jessica raised. In Tennessee, there was a statute that says we presume that a person intended to give their entire estate and not chop it up. There's a presumption that when you're reading a will, the person wanted to give away everything. It will be very odd for a person under this presumption to try and give a person this, only 2 bundles in the stick, but they can't sell them. Where basically the heirs of Jessie forever have a license to stop any sale of the land. Where it's effectively a fee tail. So it's another reason why the court reads it as a fee simple. Because they say we want to read a statute in a way to dispose of the entire estate. We don't have to waste our time always monitoring this and checking if she's selling it or not. That's a waste of the court's time. Right? Give it away to Miss Evelyn. Let it be done with. It's not a problem anymore.
Why is it clearly a fee simple? I automatically want to say it's a life estate.
Oh, well, that's what I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Because it says to have my home to live in.
And this was the point of the dissent, which we'll get to in a minute. I promise we'll get there in a minute. Any questions in the majority? Any other questions in the majority? No? Okay. Cesar, what did the dissent say?
They said that Evelyn had a life estate, and upon the death of Evelyn, the remainder would pass to Mrs. wives heirs.
Okay, so let me rewrite this a different way, okay? And then this will actually be a review of what we did the first few minutes of class, right? So from Jesse to Evelyn for life. This is how the dissent characterized it. Now, Cesar, why does the dissent characterize this as a life estate? Yeah.
Have absolute control and she don't have absolute control.
Right. Again, this isn't entirely clear, but I think actually probably the dissent has the better argument, right? I think the dissent probably has the better argument. It says, listen, she can live there, but she can't sell it, which basically means for her life she can have it, and then afterwards we don't care about her. Notwithstanding the tenancy presumption statute, this is probably the better way of reading it, but you know it goes either way. Yeah.
I feel like I agree with the dissent even more, because if you take the two clauses separately, to live in,
Yeah.
it's not only would it be a life estate, but it's like saying you can own it as long as you actually want to live there. But if you move to the city, then give it to my kids where it belongs.
Well, I don't know if you go quite that far, but it's definitely while you're living there, it's yours. Yeah.
I feel like the majority wanted to look at the words and extrinsic evidence of
Yes.
the circumstances of their
Yes.
life. Whereas the dissent wanted to look at only the words,
Yes.
which to me feels flawed because it's a layperson. They don't know what they're saying. It sounds like she's very sentimental about the house and she's misplacing her words to give a wrong
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah. So there's a never-ending debate in the law, right? I'm sure you did this in contract with the extrinsic evidence. But how much weight do you put on the text of the text of the statute, the text of the contract, and how much weight do you put to the extrinsic? The problem with extrinsic evidence, of course, is very malleable. It's very flimsy, right? And if I may give another honor to Justice Scalia, it can be manipulated, right? One of the reasons why Justice Scalia was such a fiend for text is it's a lot harder to manipulate. We have the words, we know she wrote them, it's there. If we start looking at extrinsic evidence, it gives judges a lot of opportunity. So a common example you'll see is legislative history, which was Justice Scalia's bête noire. He hated it. And there's an old maxim, right? If you look at a report from Congress, you have statements from people who liked the bill, you have statements from people who didn't like the bill, and you have statements from people just trying to insert stuff to make themselves look good. And there's an old saying that says, with legislative history, it's like looking through a crowd of people and trying to find your friends. And you can always find something to support your position. So there are difficulties. So, but the Texas presumption, not Texas, the Tennessee presumption is we want to ignore that extrinsic unless it helps us get to a full disposition of the property. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So if the constraint was not on the owner but on the buyer, and she just didn't want Chrysler to get it, that was the thing. She was not haunting the house or anything.
She may be haunting it. I don't know.
So could she have said like, I don't want Chrysler to ever get the house? Or would that be considered a?
That would also be restraint and alienation. So this idea of a restraint and alienation is a big deal. Courts don't like enforcing things saying you can't sell property because it makes property being used for low value. I mean, lurking in the background of this case, which Elizabeth raised a moment ago, is that there's going to be a highway nearby, right? You know, there's a Chrysler factory coming nearby, right? This land can be used for a lot more money. By the way, what am I up to? Yeah, Josh. So let's just look at this one because actually the opinion makes an error, which is noted in the footnote. So who has the present interest here? Josh, who has the present interest in this example? The book actually makes an error with it, and it actually says R said it. I don't want to correct my time, but what is the present interest here? What do we call that? Yes, sir. Evelyn has life estate. Okay. And what's the future interest, Josh? What do we call that? Not remainder. Yes, sir. When a life estate is followed by an interest in the grantor, when the life estate is followed by a future interest in the grantor, it's called reversion. So Jesse's heirs have reversion in fee simple. You said it. You did exactly. I'm not scolding you, but you said remainder. They're so easy to confuse. Because the future interest is in the grantor, The heirs of the grantor. We call it reversion. It's not a remainder. Okay? Had it been this, from Jesse to Evelyn for life, then to Sandra and her heirs. Right? Melody, I'm sorry, Madison. I keep calling Melody. I don't know why. What do we call the future interest in this one? Right, we know present interest, easy. Evelyn has a life estate. That's easy. What's the future interest, Madison? Who has remainder? Sandra and her heirs. Exactly right. Have remainder. And why is it a remainder, Madison? But specifically, why is it not a reversion?
Oh, because
Third party. Third party, grantor. Drill this into your head. When the future interest after life estate is in a third party, it's remainder. When the future interest after a life estate is in a grantor, it's reversion. Memorize that. Okay, go home and restate 20 times. Indeed, you'll note there's a footnote in the book. The opinion itself screwed it up. Right? The opinion called it a remainder, when indeed it was actually reversion. So even the judges in Tennessee couldn't get this one straight. But you're my students, you will get it. You'll nail it. Okay. Questions on this one? Yes, sir.
Because it's worded as sell my house, could she theoretically knock down the house and then sold all the land? Could she have moved the house?
Yeah, could she have moved the house somewhere else? I mean, that's an interesting idea. I mean, generally speaking, in common discussion, we say, oh, I own that house, right? Not actually. You actually own the land the house is on. Right? We don't speak of real estate as owning, bricks and mortar. We speak of owning the land. So I guess she could have moved the house somewhere else, I suppose. Although, if you want to give intent to the, this old widow, I mean, it's not a very big house. Here's a picture of it, right? If you want to give the intent to the widow, she probably meant land by house. But this is, it's a pretty small house. Okay, there it is. Yeah. Any other questions on the first case? No? Okay. Rachel, second case, Baker v. Weedon. What were the facts there?
Basically, they're trying to direct the sale of land that was given to the wife, she's like the second or third wife, instead of the children of Weedon.
Okay. So we have here is actually a very interesting case. We have Mr. John Weedon, who's actually quite old. He's in his 50s. And he takes on a third wife, Anna Weedon, who was 17 at the time. They have no children. Okay. John Weedon has, by his first marriage, a couple kids. Some of whom he has relations with, some of whom he doesn't. Okay. Those kids have other kids, and he actually has some sort of affection for his grandkids. So John Weedon writes a will, and he says, I give and bequeath to my beloved wife Anna all of my property during her natural life, and upon her death to her children, if she has any, and if she has no children, to my grandchildren. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that so loving and caring that he says to my loving wife, my beloved wife, I give you all my property for your natural life, and when you die, to our children, if we don't have any, to my grandkids. Isn't that so sweet? Make you cry? Fanny, was this a really sweet gesture? No. This was a jerk move, to use a phrase I can perhaps use. Why was this not a very nice gesture by the husband? No. Was this nice to his wife? Why not? Why was this not very nice to his wife? Yes. He doesn't trust his wife. He doesn't trust his wife. Think about this, right? If he actually loved his beloved wife all this much, he'd give her fee simple. But he doesn't trust his wife because he's afraid his wife will cut out the grandkids. So he says, okay, listen, sweetie, I'll let you live here till you die, but then go to my real heirs, right? Thanks for milking my cows all those years. You should only get a life estate. So, lest you think that this was some sort of benevolent act of love between a husband and his wife, he was screwing her over, right? He was putting her in a very bad spot. A very bad spot, right? Karaima, what was the bad spot that Anna, the wife, was put into for decades? Because she lived forever. Yeah, but why was she in a bad spot? What could she not do that she otherwise wanted to do? Exactly right. She couldn't sell it, right? Hold on, Samuel. Why would no one ever buy the property from Anna?
Because they wouldn't have right to the property when she dies.
They only have a life estate, right? So it's like this, right? So from what's his name, John. We have basically here. So from John to Anna for life, then to John's grandchildren and their heirs, right? That's I mean, more or less what we have here. From John to Anna for life, then to John's grandchildren and their heirs. Right? Everyone okay with this one, right? Adam, who here has a present interest? Let's just spell it out.
Present interest would be for Anna.
And what do we call it? Yes, sir. There's a life estate for Anna. Who has a future interest? Is it in a third party though?
I suppose you could say it's a third party.
No.
Is it the grantor?
Which one do you think it is? It's actually trickier. Thomas, is this the future interest in the grantor or the future interest in a third party? I like the way you're thinking. We'll tease this out.
The grantor.
Okay. What do you think, Nancy? Is the future interest in the grantor or the third party? Who's named here? Who's actually named as the recipients of the future interest? The grandchildren. What about John's cousins? Are they named? What about John's sisters? Are they named? So is the interest in the third party or the grantor? No, what do you think? Third party, yeah. Here's the trick. When there's a name, right? Grandchildren. I mean, I could put their names. What was it? Richard, whatever the heck their names were, right? Henry, Sarah. Here, I'll make it easier, right? Henry, Sarah, Louise. Okay. Henry. I mean, it's exactly naming the grandchildren, right? But Lola, if I said like this, from John to Henry, from John to Anna for life, then to Henry, Sarah, Louise, and their heirs. If I write like that, how would we characterize a future interest? What do we call that? What kind of estate is it? No. Why is it a remainder? Yes. Yes. We say there's remainder in fee simple for Henry, Sarah, and Louise. And we know it's remainder and not a reversion because it's a third party. So the trick for you is if there's ever anyone named, right, it has to be a third party. It's not just to John's heirs. It's specific heirs of John. And once they're named specifically, it's a remainder. Everyone get that? So the situation we have here, right, is that no one will buy the land from Anna because of the remainderment. This is a phrase which is mentioned in the book, which is never defined. But Harry, Sari, and whatever, they're the remainderment, right? They have the future interest. And oh, by the way, as soon as Anna dies, it goes to the kids. It goes to the grandkids. So they can basically block any sale. So again, poor Anna, right? This 90-year-old, widow on a farm. She has no money. She can't work the farm anymore. She wants to sell the land because the rent isn't adequate to support her needs. But these, her no good grandkids are blocking the sale. Right? Why are her, Camille? Why are her no good grandkids blocking the sale? They want to appreciate. Right? There's a road being built nearby, and the grandkids say, "Wait a minute, we can just wait till she dies, right? We'll get a windfall. If we sell it now when she's alive, we have to split the money. Wait till grandma dies, then we get more money." So again, there's this poor woman, right? She got screwed by her husband, and is now getting screwed by her grandkids like 7 years later. I loved at the end though how she outlived basically everyone, right? She outlived basically everyone except for one of the grandkids that I find poetic. They don't make them like they used to in Mississippi. So she outlived basically everyone, right? This woman was made of steel.
She was the same age. Like she was like way younger than
She lives to be 98. That's pretty good. Yes.
Can you go over
A remainder is when you have a life estate and the future interest goes to a third party. Reversion is when you have a life estate and the future interest goes back to the grantor or her heirs. You have to look at where the future interest is going. You need to actually read it through to figure it out.
But doesn't it say that it goes to Anna and upon her death to her children?
Does she have any though? She died without children, so that's why I abbreviated a little bit. If she had children, what would the children have gotten? So let's do that. Okay, fine. So from John to Anna for life. I didn't want to make it complicated, but I'd be happy if you ask. So John to Anna for life, then to Anna's children, if any, then to Harry, Sari, whatever, and their heirs. Okay, this is what you're asking about, right? So you really don't want to know this, but I'll tell you the answer, okay? So the present interest is Anna has a life estate. Okay? Future interest, there are two. Anna's children have remainder, and Harry, Sari, and Larry have remainder. We'll do this next week. You can actually stack remainders on top of each other. I don't want to confuse more of this, but you can actually stack remainders one top of the next. Crazy, right? But only because you asked. So you can actually stack remainders. But I tried making it easy. You don't want that, so fine. So the dilemma here, though, is, right? Anna can't sell it unless the kids consent. The only way that Anna can sell Blackacre is if the grandkids consent, right? Samantha, I'm sorry, they do Camille, so Samantha, what would have happened if the grandkids would have consented to the sale? Could she have sold everything?
If they pulled it together as like
Yes.
simple.
Exactly right. So think about it this way, right? I'm going to forget about the example of the stacked contingent remainders for now, right? But think of it this way. We have a bundle of 6, right? Grandma has the life estate. Grandkids have the remainder. They combine it. They got the entire bundle of sticks. They could sell it as one. Everyone understand this? Grandma sells her life estate. Grandkids sell their remainder. Their future interest to the same person. The unities combine. The person now has a fee simple. So the only way grandma can sell this is if the grandkids agree. But in this case, the ingrate grandkids, right? Those worthless, little millennials, right? They don't want to sell it. These are not millennials. Something else. They're actually part of the greatest generation at this point. But oh no, the worst generation. They were the baby boomers, which was almost as bad as millennials. So, of which I'm a member. So, had they sold together? So the issue in this case was Anna wanted the court to force the sale. Anna wanted the court to force the sale. And the court says, no, we're not going to force the sale because we have to give effect to the words of John. This is almost the exact opposite of the case we did before. They want to give effect to the words. John said, I'm giving my wife a life estate and remainder to my grandkids. And the court is not willing to second guess that. The court is not willing to second guess that. They say, well, you know, she can do other things. She can rent, she can maybe sell part of it, but we will not force a sale of the entire thing. And indeed, that's what happened. They only sold, I think, was it 5 acres of it to give her just enough money, but the court will not disregard the clear intent of the will of John Weedon, you know, nearly, you know, what, 70 years ago, whatever it was. Does everyone get that? So questions in this case? Yes, Josh.
I mean, it's kind of still just a version of the original will. It just says from John to Anna. It doesn't say to John's heirs to my grandchildren. He just doesn't name them as a third party. It would still reverse.
Don't say that. Don't say reverse, because there's something called a reverter. There would have been a reverse. Use it. It's a noun. So use it as a noun. Trust me. So had it been like this, I think. Let me answer Josh's question. Right? Have it said from John to Anna for life. So what will be the future interest? What would you call it?
That would be reversion.
Exactly. John's heirs have reversion.
But just because he actually named them.
That made it remainder. And there's actually a difference between reversion and remainder we'll discuss later. I don't want to bore you with it now, but there are actually different rules for each. You see we're building like a cake, right? Layer on top of layer. Unfortunately, Veronica's question had to introduce you to the idea of stack remainders, which we'll do later. Sarah?
As I was reading his will, it didn't sound like stack remainders to me because it sounded like after he said to give to her to live in a house and upon her death to her children. In my mind, that's like a period, even though there's a comma. Plus, if she did have children, it sounded like they got a consent.
So there's something called, you're really not like this, something called a contingent remainder versus a vested remainder.
Okay.
So when children are not yet born, they're contingent, whereas the grandkids were vested remainders.
Oh, I see. They're already alive.
It gets more complicated.
Yeah.
Questions? All right, let me summarize. Oh, yeah, Tim, go for it.
What if he says heirs and names, they strike heirs, and then
When we do contingent and vested remainders, you'll ask me that question. This is going, you're like 2 classes ahead. I'm trying deliberately not to give you everything because it'll scare you, but you're seeing shades of where this topic veers. So right, so far we've done 2 estates, right? We've done 2 types of estates. With a life estate and with a fee simple. With a fee simple, you don't really have to worry about future interest because it always goes to the heirs of the person who owns a life estate. However, with a life estate, there's 2 different kinds of future interest we've studied. There's the remainder. The remainder is when a life estate is filed by a future interest in a third party. And there's reversion. That's where a life estate is followed by a future interest in the grantor or the grantor's heirs. Memorize the difference between those 2. You'll need to know them going forward. Any questions? All right, have a great day. I'll see you next time.